Bigfoot Hangout, and joining me is my sidekick and beloved. Say it.
Husband.
Beloved husband. Sorry, Charlie Raymond.
Yeah, I'm happy to have Lindsay back. Last year it was a struggle doing.
Last week.
It feels like a year ago, but yeah, I did it by myself. We had Lyle Blackburn on, which was easy. He has lots of
I
stuff.
missed a good show last week.
Yeah, it was a great show having Lyle on.
But anyway, I'm glad to be back. I've had a wonderful break with my family back home in England. It's always very, very sad to leave them, but it's nice to come home as well. But it's not without sadness that we are joining you tonight. I'm sure most of you have heard about the very tragic loss of Dr. Jeff Meldrum, which has saddened all of us to the core. I know some of you probably know more than others. We know very little, but I'll let Charlie say a few words about that as well.
Yes, Dr. Meldrum, we all respect him. Every single researcher has him, at the top of the tier. Me personally, I think Dr. Meldrum was the leading academic in support of Bigfoot. His wisdom, his knowledge, his demeanor, he was so calm and cool and collected, and he had a lot of respect. And I know it's a great loss for everybody, and this is a hard one to overcome.
We even thought about postponing the show because it was I know it's been very shocking for a lot of people, and we didn't want to be disrespectful by continuing with the show, but we also wanted to give people an opportunity to say a few words in the chat if they want to, and we'll of course bring that up as we go along. We do have a wonderful guest tonight, and I'll let Charlie introduce him in just a moment. I know he didn't do it last week, and I was watching last week, and I did manage. I actually woke up with jet lag in the middle of the night, and so I jumped in the chat not far before the end of the show. Anyway, I don't believe he went through and welcomed everybody, and I always love to do that. So I'm just going to do a very quick roll call before we continue. It's very important to me. So who have we got? Chris Baylock is here. Hey, Chris, how are you? Debbie Hall is back. Hey, Debbie. Greg Cash. See you this weekend, Greg, with Judy. Hopefully, Jonas. Hello, Jonas. Matt Langford. Hey, Matt. Nice to have you with us as always. Judy's here. Hey, Judy. MH Vort. Hello, Mary Hamilton. Hey, Mary. You got your shirt on? I've got mine on. I know you girls have them. Rocking the Hidden Realm Outdoors gear tonight. Where was I? Jess Featherston. Hey, Jess. Jimmy Cox is here. Hey, Jimmy.
Brian Archibald. Good to see you.
Okay, Charlie's old teacher friend. Mad Indiana. Yes, and R.I.P. Dr. Meldrum. Well said. Buddy Isaacs, hi, Buddy. And Lane's here. Good to see you, Lane. All right, got some very familiar names in the chat. I'm happy to be back with you all. And with that, we should continue with the show because we do have a great guest.
Yes, we have an incredible guest. I am very honored and fortunate. We are very honored and fortunate to have Matt on. He's a very busy man. He has a family and life, and just like we all do. And so we're fortunate to have him. We want to bring him on. Everybody knows Matt is the founder of the BFRO, and back in the early '90s, late '90s, I used to lay awake at night on my computer reading all the new BFRO. I can't say it. BFRO reports. Say that real quick.
And he's not been drinking, I promise.
Yeah, and there's so much that Matt has accomplished over his short career. Well, it's a long career, but in a short amount of time, he's accomplished so much. So we're gonna get him on. We're gonna ask questions, and we're gonna also ask him about Meldrum. So here is Matt. We don't have video, so Matt is coming to stage here with just audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Hey, Matt.
we can. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Very good. I'm glad the audio's working out.
Yeah, it sounds great. You sound loud and clear.
So Matt, regarding Meldrum, what are your thoughts? Anything you'd like to share?
Earlier in the day, and it was kind of leaked before somebody found out about it through ISU before the family was able to make their kind of official announcement. So it kind of got around, and people started calling around, including me, to find out if it was true. And sure enough, it was true. And I'm so glad that Cliff Barackman is up there. He's going to be helping out the family. And others have asked me, they said, is there any kind of a fund where we can make donations, like, to the family? And of course, this is all so sudden that, nobody was even thinking about this. But I told the one guy who could donate some money, I said, I'll ask Cliff if he can set that up. Okay. And what I'm thinking is not to all of a sudden start thinking big about it, but I'm thinking I think people would really like is if there was a fund where you could make a donation, half the money would go to the family, the other half of the money would go to be preserving his huge collection of stuff in his lab and putting it in some kind of a mobile exhibit, etc., that can go around to different Bigfoot festivals.
Right.
And that would be just the best way to honor Jeff, because that's what he did. He took around his stuff to different conferences and festivals.
Yeah.
And I think he would be smiling upon the idea that would keep happening after his death. Like all the best tracks and everything he brought to the fore could go around and let people see that and appreciate what he built his career around, which is, I have you're the first one who's heard this idea. I'll be presenting it to Cliff and just getting a litmus test on whether or not they think family would be into that. But I think people would like the idea that they're not just helping out his family, but they're also kind of preserving his legacy in that way. In getting the collection out of the lab. Obviously, the lab's going to go to somebody else now, but there's tons of stuff in there, and he would want people to be able to see it. It shouldn't be put away. It's impressive stuff. And he taught a lot of people about these creatures through that collection of casts that he has. He was influential on me, kind of, his analysis of the backs and the mid-tarsal fold and everything. It really, the anatomy that he was been talking about this for years showed an adaptation that would help in climbing steep slopes and or trees by the foot being able to flex in the middle like a hand. Did we lose? Am I there? Oh,
you're there. Sorry, I put Meldrum up as you were talking about him.
That's a good idea. Yeah. And it's funny, in that cast, that flat-footed cast that he's holding up in that image, you don't see it in there, but he had many examples of showing that. And that wasn't the only, to me, I think that was one of the major things that he was able to establish. But, Jeff Meldrum had been out in the field many times. And he had been out there when these things were around. One of the times that he saw, I don't know how many times he got to see these creatures in the field, but one of the times was in Kentucky. He has a kind of a special connection with that state because of it. He was out at the Kentucky site with Bindernagel, and they both got to see one when they were out there while that was all going on. And my God, that's like 20 years ago now.
And that was, we won't get into it too much at all, actually. But people will know we talked about the Erickson Project 2 weeks ago. So, that's where it was. So
Yeah.
Just for all those people out there thinking everything was made up, they actually, both of them got to see a Bigfoot at that location. So
Yeah,
But
which
it's
was
very,
great because people are naturally going to question whenever something else comes up. But it was really good that he and Ben and Nagel were able to go out and see that there was some real activity going on there. It was a special thing.
yeah, I agree.
well, that's a wonderful idea, Matt, and I truly, sincerely hope that you're able to bring that into fruition. It would be it's such a great loss as it stands, but for all of his, his entire collection and everything just to be put into storage would just be absolutely awful. So hopefully
I think
make that work.
My guess would be between Cliff's museum and maybe Coleman's museum, they would both have a nice display, and they're kind of spread out, right? They're two ends of the country. So those are two great locations to see a lot of Jeff's collection as well.
It's really
absolutely
shocking that we're even talking about it. I still don't think it's sunk in, for me anyway. I'm sure it's the same for most people, people that are just getting to hear about it and perhaps even just tuning in and hearing about it tonight. It's absolutely awful.
I remember, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons it's awful for me is that I was with him just a few months ago and was hanging out with him a few days in a row. We were driving around doing radio interviews together at the Yakima conference in Washington. And he had a booth there like he would do at a lot of conferences, and he was selling a lot of different things, including copies of casts. And you would have never thought he had any health problems at all. I mean, he had a remarkable stamina for dealing with the crowds. He was friendly. We did a VIP night. Both of us had like hundreds of people standing in line to get autographs and photos. And he was a trooper. And I guess apparently it was a brain cancer that he didn't know he had. And I've known this is not the first time in my life I've heard this happen, where somebody who all of a sudden gets taken down by a brain tumor that they didn't know they had. And it goes from nothing to all of a sudden they collapse. And just like him, he collapsed, and then he's in a coma, and then he's in hospice, and then he's gone. And it all happens like in a course of a week.
That's terrible. And there's never a bright side really, but it sounds like he went pretty fast considering, so in a way, you didn't linger on for a long time suffering, so to speak. Like you said, I was just with him in May at the festival here, and he was standing up, enthusiastic. Every single person that came to his booth, I mean, the smile on his face, and he'd love to talk to every single person all day. And then at the VIP dinner, the same thing like you mentioned. He talked to everybody. He even talked to me, LOL. But yeah, we shared stories about what I thought Bigfoot was. He was more Gigantopithecus. I'm more Homo sapien. We're two ends of the spectrum, so to speak. But he listened to me, and he listened to everything I said about all the reports that I've done of close encounters. Every single person said it looked human-like. And when they described the nose, they said it had a hooded nose. And I asked him about that. I said, Dr. Meldrum, is that based on climate, having the hooded nose? And he said no, which is good, because I do think there's some Homo sapien in these creatures, but that's just me. But he listened to me. He was, up until the very end, just so giving and loved to share his knowledge.
Yeah, and isn't it funny? It's about, the Gigantopithecus or Homo sapien, etc. I think the Bigfoot community had matured enough over the years where we understood that. I mean, there used to be so much backbiting and fighting and stuff like this. And after a while, everybody realized that, there's a lot of people who have different opinions about this stuff. And that wasn't going to get in the way of us being able to talk to each other about it. and think, okay, we have this theory, we have that theory. We all know that we don't know what the correct answer is, but we're certainly not going to divide ourselves into camps over, these people think this and they're not thinking, and that may sound silly, but like 30 years ago, that was kind of the norm, and it was like some groups who took one position would like say some other group has some kind of agenda regarding their position, and no, it's just that they looked at all the evidence and they kind of came to their conclusion, and there was big fights about it, but now we've got to the point where it's just like, because I remember people saying, "Oh, you don't get into BFO unless you subscribe to like their orthodoxy," and I'm like, "Orthodoxy? It's like everybody has a different opinion, almost." You know what I mean? I mean, we understand that nobody's going to agree on everything, and that's just the way it is, and that's okay, because the more importantly, we're trying to establish these things are real and hopefully figuring out the answer at some point. But
I'm glad, like Meldrum, he was very open-minded and wasn't, about other people's theories or beliefs and their research. He was very open-minded. And I think it sounds crazy, but I think the Bigfoot community as a whole, we're coming around, most of us, to being more open-minded, more supportive, even getting into the woo, the paranormal, supernatural stuff. There's a little bit more support here and there for some orbs and some mind speak and some stuff that before was kind of taboo, so to speak. But now I think a lot of us are looking at some of that stuff because of reports or research or whatever. And so it's changing. I think a lot of us are working better together.
People are just overall becoming more open-minded for various reasons. Like, it's not just with Bigfoot. It's lots of different topics, but I mean, this one has so many variables. Bigfoot, it's just that there are so many different camps within it. But
so it's getting better. I mean, like anything, like religion, politics. You take a side. There could be some fighting, some jealousy, and some of that crap. But I think it's getting better overall with the Bigfoot community.
It is, and people are learning that there's, like, for example, just in the paranormal thing, they're the ones who are just like the extreme of staunch, like there's nothing even slightly paranormalish about them, and then there's the farther extremes, like that they're completely paranormal beings, they're shapeshifters, and what we've come to learn, the BFROs over the years, is there's definitely some strange stuff that happens around these creatures. And it really seems like, yeah, these are flesh and blood creatures, but there's paranormal elements involved. Not all the ones that people like most. There's a whole, there's a category of paranormal stuff that does happen, and then a whole other set of stuff that at least I haven't seen. You hear about, through other channels, but not through actual reports, like portals and cloaking and things like that. You didn't really hear about that too recently, but you do hear from witnesses about a lot of witnesses have seen orbs. A lot of witnesses have seen glowing eyes, which I don't consider that a paranormal thing, but I'll tell you, when you're in the field and you experience that and you're never seen that before, boy, would you think that's paranormal. And then the mind speak thing, there seems to be something with that, and zapping, and just a whole bunch of things that are outside the normal rubric of capabilities of wild animals. And I've always looked at it as, and that was reinforced again when these photos came, this image, this came from Missouri, a trail cam image where you could see one, and it's not a clear image, but it's clear enough that when you have a comparative image of a 6 foot tall guy, it really shows what people have described for so long, which is how huge these things are. And I talked to another guy. There was a report came in not long ago from, I think I could say it, it's not going to cause any problems, in the Kettle Moraine area of Wisconsin, where two guys basically had a really close range one, and one of the guys was a carpenter, and it was like one was standing 20 or 30 feet away from him, and they were talking about the size of these creatures and how big the thing was, and the width of it was like if you had two people standing shoulder to shoulder. That's about the width of the thing. That's how wide it was. So wide and tall. And this carpenter guy said this thing's head had to be 20 inches wide. So like almost as like, again, like two heads next to each other. That's big. So when you have a head on a biped that's, a rounded biped that's that big, there's a very big brain in there. There's a brain in there that's probably twice or three times the size of a human's brain. And the brain is part of the whole nervous system, generates energy. It generates kind of like, in the past they've called it an auric field or different things, but there's energy that can be generated by the brain that can actually be detected. So if you have a very big generator that can generate vibes and auric field, etc., then yeah, you can expect things might be observed in that situation that aren't seen anywhere else in the animal kingdom, because nowhere else is something going to have a brain that big outside of, like, I think there's a couple whale species that have brains that are larger than ours, but I don't know, about twice as large. But that would be tipping the scales of one of the largest brains, and, one of the largest electrical generators. So I've always looked to that to understand how they could do something like zapping, which really, and these are things we were almost like hoping when we were first hearing about this stuff that we wouldn't have to talk about it, but it kept coming up so much. And then on expeditions, people would experiencing these things themselves. And we're just like thinking, you know what? We can't deny this stuff because it sounds too woo. And there were still people in the groups that like, don't talk about this. It'll take away your credibility. And we're like, you know what? If enough.
Oh, we lost him.
Did we lose you?
I think we lost him.
Is it just temporary?
Yeah, let's see. He might have lost connection.
Oh.
Well, he might come back on. Let's see here.
All right, I got you.
Oh,
okay. There you go.
All right. So yeah, there was enough people had seen these things where we're like, okay, if this is, for a while we didn't want to talk about it in expeditions, but we're like saying, if anything unusual happens, please let us know. But we didn't want to tell people exactly what, because we didn't want to be like leading them or being suggestible. We're just like, any kind of weird sensations, smells, like the whole gamut, like come back and tell us. And that's when people would come back and describe these kind of consistent things, and things like zapping and glowing eyes and orbs. And those things didn't happen all the time, but they happened enough. Did I lose you?
No, I'm sorry.
No, he's just losing it.
I was telling Lindsay something about.
Okay.
One thing that I say all the time, Matt, is they have adapted over thousands of years to elude us, to avoid us, to stay just far enough away from us because they know we kill things. And that's how they've been able to survive this long. And they had to adapt. They had to use part of their brains we don't use because we're lazy. We use technology now. We use our phones for everything. We watch TV, computers. We need glasses because we lose our eyesight. But they rely on their senses for their survival. And maybe parts of those brains, like you said, are more developed than ours.
Right. And they could be using them for things that we just don't know. And one of that might be a form of telepathy. And that's what it's, when they talk about mind speak, they're talking about that. And specifically, you could think, when you hear that, you think, oh, the thing is like you're hearing a whole conversation. And no, usually what it was, it's like, it's very short, almost like a message or a feeling, a very distinct feeling that conveys a very specific message, like turn around and leave or go back or something like that, that whoever gets that message, they understand it. And of course, I've talked to people. I haven't had the benefit of that myself, at least not that strongly. So I've often asked, did you hear a voice? Like, was it a male voice? Did it speak English? Very specific. And so many times I heard, it wasn't really a voice. It was almost like, it was like you got the message without hearing the voice, and that feeling that you got kind of translated in their own mind to what the message was, of like, don't come any further, etc. It was just this feeling, and that didn't have words attached. Then there was other things where people were seeing actual visions of like their faces, etc. Like two people at the same time were seeing this kind of stuff. So those abilities may be there, but it's just between that and orbs, it just goes to show you there's so many like interesting and amazing things about these creatures that will be better understood and will tell us, down the line, and will tell us more about the world, more about physics, and more about ourselves than people are thinking right now. I mean, even if none of that stuff is there, we're still going to learn a lot about ourselves, especially how our ancestors lived in the past, because the way these things live now is very much like our ancestors lived a long time ago. Right. And they still live that way, and it's just kind of amazing that there can be a healthy population of these things in places like even in Kentucky. But I say even in Kentucky as if that would seem to be an unlikely place. And no, Kentucky is a very likely place. After having spent, enough years in Ohio and that part of the country, and realizing there's so much more habitat for these things east of the Mississippi than west. It's kind of ironic because people think, oh, the vast Pacific Northwest, et cetera, et cetera. And, so much of what you call the Northwest, like Washington and Oregon, that's like only the most western third of the country that has those kind of forests. And the rest is just like a Washington state. 2/3 of it is just kind of rolling prairie. And 2/3 of Oregon is like high desert. So the area that has the kind of wet forest, just kind of a strip along the coast, up to Alaska. But back east, you guys have forest and loads of deer, all over the place, and that's what they need. And it's even better than just pure forest, because you have a whole lot of farm fields that feed a whole lot of animals. I mean, there's deer that will, make it through the winter by nibbling off the stubble left in cornfields all over the place. So you have the perfect environment. We have a mix of forest and farmlands, and of course, plenty of water, etc., and other food sources back east. And again, when I say back east means something different than to you guys, what it means, like if you're in California, back east would mean anything east of the Mississippi. Yeah. But if there's just so much of that back there, and yeah, Kentucky's one of those places. And they wouldn't be everywhere in Kentucky, but there's some places where they're definitely around, and they've probably been there a long time. But I think after really taking in all this information reports over the years and gradually learning how the landscape of America has changed from like the late 1800s, and then when the forests were reduced, at least in the east, were reduced to like the lowest amount, which would have been in the Great Depression era, where so much was cut down. If you look at photos from like the Great Depression era, and it would be in Kentucky too, and in Ohio, historical photos, it was just like a wasteland. Like everything was cut down. All of the old growth, trees were like things that got in the way of being able to plant things, and they used them for railroad ties and for fire and construction and everything else. So the forest returned, but the predators had all been eradicated. So there used to be wolves all over the place in Ohio. There was wolves and big cats, and there was all sorts of many classes of predators that feed on deer. So those were eliminated back east, but the prey was still there. And as the forest returned, the deer population got more and more and more and more. It really increased And so you had a lot. You had a forest returning. You had a lot of prey species returning, and I think Bigfoots, they were probably always there in some numbers, but I think their numbers started increasing when the forest really started bouncing back, like in the 50s and 60s. Again, after the Depression, there was so many forests that started to return, and places that had been farm fields that reverted back. Because I mean, you've probably been around in the woods. I bet you see this in Kentucky. You go deep in the woods in Kentucky and in Ohio, a lot of those places, you'll run into like the remains of old buildings and farmhouses in places where there hadn't been forest there before. And the forest kind of returned to this acreage and grew back up. And so now you definitely have more forest there now than you did like 50 years ago, in much of Kentucky.
Yeah, the other thing I tell people about Kentucky is we live in their backyards and they live in our backyards. And so like people know, it takes two things to have a sighting. It takes a Bigfoot and it takes a witness. So we're fortunate to live right next to them. And that's why Kentucky has so many reports. But one thing I noticed, Matt, with lately here, I said in the last year even, I'm getting more of the older reports that people have held on to for 20, 30 years and never told anybody for 20, 30 years. But now they feel safer because of the TV shows, all the conferences, Dr. Meldrum, academics in support of it. So now they feel comfortable after 20, 30 years. So I'm getting a larger influx of old reports. Do you see that with the BFRO?
Yes, and we've seen that for quite a long time. And it's really came in earnest when Finding Bigfoot was on. Then we started getting a lot of reports that extended back to the 60s and 70s and weren't reported for the reasons you said. It was a combination of things. It was they were afraid of ridicule. They didn't want people to make fun of them. But moreover, they didn't know who to report it to. Because, I mean, even when I was first got into it in like the 80s, you really had to do some networking to find out even the very few other people that were collecting those reports. I mean, in the mid-'80s, there was probably only a dozen people between the U.S. and Canada that were keeping, files of newspaper clippings, because that's all you had back then, and hearing about new reports, and then maybe 3 or 4 people that tried putting it together in newsletters and were sending out newsletters, and you'd be excited if you heard about a report that had happened 2 years before. Like that was about as recent as you were going to hear it. So people didn't know who to report them to. They know that like the police weren't going to be interested. Only on occasion did like somebody who saw one actually knew a local news writer who might write it up. But then the internet came along and that changed everything. That meant that people could, and I knew this early on when I made one of the things I was thinking when I made the website, I was thinking, okay, how do I use the internet to collect information on Bigfoot sightings? And I knew that, okay, if people, if I put it into a database that's ordered by state and county, etc., and I start with a whole bunch of reports and I put them into that system, I knew that anybody who did see one would go to look and see if anybody else had seen one in that same state or county. And if in the process of looking, they were to see a link saying, oh, you could submit your report here, then they would do that. And a lot of people did. And that's how we started getting reports back then, because they came to the BFRO website to look up to see if there was other reports there. That was the first thing they wanted to do, and then saw that there was a way to add their information. And they did it and had been doing it since the mid-'90s.
And Matt, your website, that's one of the things I tell people. It's the largest database of sightings in the world. And then you started that, and that is comparable, or even I'm not going to compare exactly, apples, oranges, but Meldrum's cast collection, Meldrum's research, what you have done with the internet and your website is comparable, the same, or even whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. That is so valuable and crucial. It's great to have, of course, the casts, the audio and the video and the hair and all that, but the witness testimonies, I tell everybody this because that's what I specialize in too, is witnesses tell us what they look like, because we don't have a lot of videos and pictures. They tell us where they live, so we know to go look for casts, and they tell us how they behave, so we learn their behaviors, all from witnesses. So your website is crucial. I mean, it is, I still go to it today and look at new reports.
And one of the thoughts that was behind it from the beginning was that also helped me to realize how it should be structured, was that reports, that because there was TV shows happening in the 70s and the 80s, and for the people who caught those shows, like In Search Of, etc., and some others, they would very often see a guy named Peter Byrne who had this thing called the Bigfoot Research Project. And Peter Byrne, people would send him reports. So he received reports from a lot of different parts of the country. And he kind of kept them, like him and his other guys there, kept them to themselves, etc. But we came to realize that he was very dismissive of reports from back east. He only took reports to the Northwest seriously. And we thought that was just such a waste. And that these people are sending them in hoping, wanting them to be taken seriously. So my thought was, okay, structure this database, let people see that there's reports from all over the country, and then with that information, make it so that other Bigfoot researchers in those parts of the country could get at that information. So we set up this organization to make it so, okay, we have some basic level of filtering to find out if somebody's really a Bigfoot researcher and they're really not going to do something objectionable by having access to that information. But, we want people to be able to interview witnesses and go out and do Bigfoot field research, etc. And so that came to define what the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization was. We thought there's a lot of witnesses out there who have information. They want it to be communicated to Bigfoot researchers, not just one guy, or not just a group of people in one organization that's going to hoard all this stuff and then stand there like, okay, you want access to this information? What are you going to give me? No, our thought was people want some Bigfoot researchers, especially ones that might be operating in the state, to know about this. So we'll have that information, and then we knew that there's a lot of researchers out there, people who are coming up, who are respectable, who want to look into it, who want to check things out, and they want to know about it. So we'll just bring those two things together. We'll have the information coming in, and we won't, like when we post reports, we're not going to post people's contact information, but it's there in the internal database so that people who are Bigfoot researchers in different parts of the country can, once they, people in the BFRO get familiar with them and they kind of recommend to me, it's like, yeah, let this guy have access. Then we give them access, and they, a lot of them don't end up even posting reports they look into. But, the main thing is for the witness, for somebody to get back to the witness, because that's what the witness wants. And the witness wants some attention, and our people have to decide who's worthy of that attention. And they take it upon themselves to do that. But by having, a lot of big people in the BFRO, we just maximize the ability, the potential for witnesses to get some attention that they might not get otherwise.
And it's crucial that you have researchers in every state that will screen a lot of these reports, phone call, text message, email, whatever. But eventually they screen all the bogus stuff. So by the time it makes it online, that researcher has done his job or her job to get rid of the crap. And
do you know how many reports you've got on the database now, Matt?
Well, of raw report submissions now, it's almost 80,000 that we've received, but there's close to about It's about 10%. So there's like 6,500 that we have posted.
Right.
And we're okay with that because we want to make sure that the fraction, the ones that we do post, we're very confident about those.
Yeah. Which would be the busiest state?
You know what? Washington is always produces a lot of reports.
Mm-hmm.
And Ohio produces a lot of reports.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Illinois is up there too, which is surprising.
What's that?
Illinois is up there.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Illinois is, unfortunately, we had a researcher who worked Illinois back in the early days who was posting like a lot of reports that I wouldn't post because they were just kind of sound only reports. And if people are saying that like they heard a sound, they've never heard anything like it, yada yada, and you know, it might be valid, but I wouldn't consider that strong enough to post. So there was a lot, you know, a higher ratio of raw reports that we received from Illinois got posted, and that's one of the reasons up there. But we still get good reports from Illinois, especially the parts of Illinois where you have these river systems and creeks that connect to the Mississippi River. So it's that side, that kind of western side of Illinois, that most of the Illinois reports come from. And they still come from today. And again, you have it's from places where there's a lot of farmland and mixed in with a lot of forest and loads of deer around.
So Matt, I know there's a lot of reports you've investigated, you've read about, you've experienced. Can you share one or two of your encounters that from a witness or yourself that pop into your head as something really exciting, unique, different, scary, whatever pops in your head? Can you share one or two?
Whenever I'm doing that, of course, the ones that are going to pop into my head.
Oh yeah.
What's that?
She said she wants to hear about your sightings.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh, we might have lost him.
Lost him again. No.
Well, he might come back on. Hold on, we'll wait.
Can you hear me?
We lost you for a second.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you want to share one of your sightings and maybe one sighting from your database that you like.
Well, I'll give you. I can give you two of my own experiences that are pretty notable. One was in Ohio, where I was like standing 15 feet away from one that was standing there growling at me. And it was after that I realized I had to start the BFRO. There had to be an organization. That was in 1994.
1994, you're face to face with a Bigfoot in Ohio.
Yep. And that was
daytime or nighttime?
What's that?
Was it daytime or nighttime?
It was nighttime. It was about 2:30 a.m. And it was in a place called the Berlin Wildlife Refuge. Yeah. And that's near, well, it's not terribly far from Kent, Ohio. Not terribly far from Kent State is the landmark that people would know. If I said like halfway between, Akron and Youngstown, not a lot of people would know, have enough sense, but a lot of people have heard Kent State and can figure out from there what it is. But it was, that was after like my own version of a media blitz there. When I went out there, I went to law school in Ohio, and this was before the internet. Just a few, because the internet basically arrived during my last years of law school. But nobody was really, there was a thing called CompuServe at the beginning, and it was just, purely a messaging thing. So my media blitz was to put classified ads into all the little farmer newspapers, because every farm town in Ohio, that had over a certain population had their own little newspaper, and was largely funded by the classified ads that like farmers would put in their farm equipment. And I learned one thing fairly quickly is that when those newspapers would come out, the people in the area, the farmers, would read every single classified ad in their local paper, because it was like, the Craigslist, you know what I mean? That was where people, it was like the Facebook marketplace. That's where everybody was selling their stuff. And so that made it very effective to put in little ads that just said, have you seen a Bigfoot? And here, call this number. And so that brought in a whole bunch of information. And then those ads led to this one newspaper in East Liverpool that called me up and they wanted to know, what's this ad about? What am I doing? And I told the guy all about it, the newspaper guy. And I sent him, a good witness sketch. And I said, dude, if you put this article in the paper there, you're going to be surprised how many people come forward from that area, that part of Ohio, to confirm or to corroborate that they've also seen one. So, dude made it a front page story for the East Liverpool newspaper with this witness sketch. And that brought in, as I expected, more information, including one place that was getting a guy at a property that was having stuff happen frequently. And to make a long story short, that's the place that I went out to, set up a lot of equipment, and got the Ohio How recording. So that was directly caused by, me putting, as a result of putting classified ads in little newspapers all around. So that was pre-internet. And then a bunch of reports also came in from this Berlin wildlife area, and it was all concentrated around this railroad bed that goes right across Berlin Lake, and kind of the creeks nearby this railroad bed. And so we also knew from farmers who had heard them that there was this one specific area where it all seemed to be radiating out from. So I and one of the locals went there and decided to do a stakeout on this brand new road that had been bulldozed back into this swamp area where they put like an oil tank back in there. And we figured that they probably using, and there was a neighbor nearby who had heard a scream from that direction. We thought, okay, it's so difficult to get through these woods that a Bigfoot would probably opt to walk along this gravel road at night because it would move faster, and it was a good bet. We thought there was only going to be one of them, because that's all you always think. You think of a Bigfoot counter, if you're going to run into one, you're only going to run into a single one. You're not thinking that you might run into two of them. But two of them.
Oh, he'll be back. Hold on. He'll come right
back in the woods, maybe 10 feet off the road in the shadows. And he saw the first one, come around the bend. Do you still hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. After hearing voices coming down, and we thought that he was telling me on the walkie-talkie that he hears voices, and I thought it was people coming. And I thought it was because he had told people that we were going to be there, and it was like his friends coming to look for us. But then one came around the corner, and it stopped and looked in his direction, and got down on his haunches and started like swaying back and forth slowly. And he was freaking out because not only was this area, the tree covers made like a tunnel over the road, but then he was off the road, even in a darker area. But he didn't realize that the night vision binoculars that he was using were lighting up his face. I mean, it's like when you look on a night vision scope, you're looking at a lit screen. So it was kind of lighting up its face, and that's what the thing saw. And then it stopped and looked at him, and then it got up and did these arm gestures, which I'll never forget the way he explained it to me. He showed, like, demonstrated. It was like, how you would hold up like both arms to do a gesture of saying, go back, go back. Well, this thing held up its arms and used its whole body to make this gesture of like, go back, go back. And so it did that, and then it walked back out of view, and then he heard brush and crunching through the woods. And he's telling me this, and I'm thinking, oh, well, they're going to circumvent us now. They're going to jam. And so we're sitting there waiting, and then two of them charged at him. Came busting through the brush, and I could hear this. It sounded like horses crashing through the woods. And they stopped short about 15, 20 feet away from him, and he shined a flashlight on them. And he lit them. There was two of them. One was much taller than the other, and they were standing real close. The big one holds up his arm to kind of shield the light. And then he's on the walkie-talkie saying, what do we do? What do we do? And he had a gun with him too. We both had guns. And he said, should I shoot it? Should I shoot it? And I'm like, no, don't shoot. I'm like, there's two of them. I said, if you shoot one, the other one's going to kill you. So I said, just come back over here. I said, we found out where they're at, and we're going to set up cameras here, and just, now we know where to set up surveillance equipment. And so he comes back over to me, and I'm telling him this, and I said, where's all my stuff? Like my night vision binoculars and da-da-da-da. And he goes, well, I dropped it on the ground back over there. I'm like, dude, you're going to go back over there and get that stuff. And I said, if they're not going to go, if they were going to kill you, they would have already done it. So just shine the flashlight, go over there and get the stuff. And he starts walking back over there to get it. And that's when the bigger one comes crunching through the woods behind me. And I could hear it stepping. And dude, when they want to be really quiet, they can be quiet and you'll hear a little bit of crunching that could be like a raccoon or something. But this thing was taking steps like it wanted me to hear it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. And it circled around and then popped out, moved out through the edge growth, this kind of curtain of growth on the edge of this clearing, and then just stood there growling. And it wasn't a very loud and ferocious growl. It was kind of like, the impression I got, he was almost like an old man. And as I've always said, it's like, the kind of growl like if an old man were to you're a kid and he catches you in his backyard, and it'd be just, and it was like that. And then I immediately started talking at it, saying, it's okay, we're leaving. Look, I'm picking up my stuff. And, it wouldn't understand what you're saying, but it's funny because I saw a video recently of a woman.
Oh, we lost audio there.
I lost him.
He'll be right back. There he is.
Here he is.
We lost connection there.
At what point did you still hear me now?
Yeah, we just lost the last five seconds or so.
Okay, so saying I saw a video recently of a woman who's on a paddleboard. She's surrounded by killer whales, and she started doing the same thing that I did in that situation with the Bigfoot. You just start talking to it. She's like, okay, I see it, it's all right. Like you do if you had a dog come up and start growling at you. You're going to start talking to that dog. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I did, and I picked up my stuff, and the thing just kind of stood there, and it kept growling, and then we walked away. And I was, people have figured, okay, I was, you'd be terrified in that situation. But I already knew from having talked to so many witnesses that they'll do this charging at you and then stop at a certain distance, like 15 or 20 feet, and that's as close as they'll come. Well, not only had I heard this from so many different witnesses, but it had just happened 30 seconds before with this guy. They charged at him and stopped at a certain distance, and that was as close as they were going to come. So I just knew that, this thing, that's all it's going to do. And so then I walked out of there with that guy, and that was very unnerving because it was so dark, couldn't see whether or not the thing was following us. But eventually I got back to the car, and then I had one of the very earliest Radio Shack car phones back then that you could guide through Radio Shack. Yeah. And this was before the era of digital, where everything now, when you talk on your phone, everything is transmitted digitally. But back then, it was called analog, and people could intercept those analog phone, with scanners. And there was a lot of people around in Ohio who had scanners and were listening to these phone call transmissions and things like that. So there was people who heard me call my wife and tell her that I just had an encounter and and I kind of said where I was. But I gave enough information of where I was that there were some Bigfooters who went right to the spot a couple weeks later.
Right.
Because I just didn't expect when I was calling my wife, telling her where I was, that there'd be other people listening. Yeah. But anyway, I went back every night for the next couple of weeks, set up a camera system, infrared light and all these things, and I just couldn't get the thing. Fortunately, the infrared light back then, it wasn't a no-glow system. It was a definite red glow. It was a 6-inch disc, Israeli Army surplus, for an infrared spotlight. and it was glowing red. And the Squatch was smart enough to know not to walk in front of it. But on the audio, on one of the nights, you could hear something crunch, 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 crunch to the wood, and then whack, as if it smacked the camera box with a stick, but from behind. It didn't want to walk in front of the camera box. It came behind it and hit it with a stick, like to see what it would do.
Yeah.
It just, all of that just gave me so much more appreciation of how smart these things are. And they're just, and people will just consistently underestimate their intelligence. And I think if they're living out in the woods and they're not driving fancy cars and building structures and everything that, all the things that we do as a mark of our intelligence, if they don't do any of that, then they must not be very smart. But boy, are they very smart for their lifestyle. And they're very smart about kind of knowing what humans are capable of. And if they watch us long enough, they can kind of assess how much of a threat we might be. And that's one of the reasons I think they come and check people out and watch on expeditions, is because they really need to find out, like, are you there to hunt? Are you there with dogs and guns and spotlights, or are you just camping? Right. And so that has guided so much of what we've done, knowing that they'll do that when you first enter in to their environment. If you haven't been there before, is they're really trying to assess the threat there, and that's when you have an opportunity to maybe get them on camera, especially if you have a therm.
Yeah, and Matt, I've learned all that from you and your BFRO expeditions, and people don't realize what you just said. You have to go out there, be non-threatening. You got to act like happy-go-lucky campers and hikers, play music, cook food, laugh. You're not going to sneak up on them with camo and all these things. So that's why so many people have interactions on your expeditions, or even have sightings, because they go to hot spots, number one. Number two, they follow your guidelines, your suggestions on how to have the best interaction. And I've done that myself, many expeditions, and we've had great success as well. So, there's so many things people can learn from, yourself and the BFROs, the whole group of researchers that are part of the BFRO. I highly recommend any of the expeditions. You just go to the BFRO.net and you guys can sign up for an expedition. Coming up, Matt, do you have anything exciting coming up? Any projects for next year, or anything coming up?
Well, we're trying to, we're hoping that the DNA study is going to progress. There's been some complications in getting that done, but I'm talking to Darby a lot, and I think there's good potential that he could get DNA from there. But in terms of projects, it's, there's a couple of people that want to get involved, and I could say that there's one potential that I do plan on doing at some point that involves a place that's in the Pacific Northwest. I could say it's on the Olympic Peninsula, and it is a place where we know from the locals that live there that, let's say, that these things come up at a particular place along a creek during a salmon run, and they've been there doing that so consistently that it's possible to use a good thermal scope that's meant to look a long distance, maybe a combination of that and a couple of very, very well concealed trail cams that can maybe get a little closer. But of course, it's always best, if possible, to try to get from far away. And that's what I did in Kentucky. The Erickson project, I was the first one there to kind of put in a camera system to try to capture what was going on there. And I was very, very adamant. Boy, was that a struggle, because there was so much pushing back and forth. It was me, and then there was the people that lived on the property, and then there was Adrian. And my whole thing was like, no, let's get a camera and zoom in from a distance, and not try to put a camera right down when this thing comes up and gets the pancakes, because it might notice that. And then the only thing I said, listen, the only thing I want to do is put a very indiscreet, like, illuminator, like with a no glow 940 nanometer like a cutoff, where like there's no glow that comes out of it. It's like you can look right at it and it doesn't, and I put that in a tree shining down at the spot where the plate would be. And the thing came up and sat down and ate the pancakes just like the people described. And that's like the pancake footage, which still hasn't been released publicly. I can't release it because technically Adrian owns it. I was the one who set up the camera system, but he paid me. He paid for the camera system, paid for me to go out there and set that up. So that's called a work for hire. So he owns that. And with the Erickson project, remember the whole idea was he had these maddeningly short clips from there. And each one seems to be cut off prematurely. And it's very frustrating to watch them because you feel like you've got one in frame and then suddenly it ends. But what was going on there was, I mean, he was so, talk about frustrating. I was just spitting bullets. So the guy at the property, Adrian was paying him for every clip that he would get. And this guy knew that Adrian wanted to make a movie, wanted to do a big documentary. So if he had any one clip that was really long, then that's all he would need for his movie. And so he would deliberately stop filming. And it was almost like giving Adrian a teaser, and maybe Adrian would pay for that again, but he was never going to let Adrian have the really, really good footage for Adrian to say, okay, I've got what I need, and I'm walking away. No, so he milked Adrian for a lot. And one of the arguments I had with Adrian from the beginning, where I finally just kind of walked away, because I said, this is like, you'll see I'm right about this. And eventually he admitted I was totally right and he should have listened to me. I told him, I said, you should have offered to pay him for footage by the minute, like $100 for every minute or $1,000 for every minute of footage. And if you would have done that, you would have ended up with an hour's worth of footage.
Right.
If you would have paid it by the amount of time that he was recording, then he wouldn't have stopped recording.
Right.
Instead of just getting these little teaser clips that Adrian was shelling out thousands of bucks for, because after a while the guy was just thinking, how can he get the most amount of money from Erickson? And that was the way to do it, by doing these short clips, which was just tragic, because you would have had some fantastic footage. And eventually the things stopped coming around. And then I helped him to line up a scientist who would stay there. And she did, and she got to see one on a couple of occasions.
Was that Layla?
That was Layla.
Yeah.
But the bad part about that is the guy who lived there, Adrian, to make sure that Adrian had better control over what was going on there, he bought the property. He bought the property and then had Layla stay there. And what he should have done, he didn't think that they were going to do that, but the guy, the male of the house, who was kind of a scoundrel, went and bought a property like a couple hundred yards away, like close enough so that when the lady went out and would make the sound, she would call out to these things when she would leave out the food. They were close enough away that after they moved, she could call out to the things that were down in the valley, and they would go to the new property.
Yeah. And
then they were back in the same rut again, where he was getting these short clips and having to pay for them, from this new property, and then they weren't coming around where Layla was at anymore. But Layla was smart about it, that she would hang out with them and go to that property, and that's how, she saw them a couple times. But they got some great stuff. But Adrian wanted to get clips from, a whole bunch of other places that were like better, longer clips, not just from Kentucky, but from other places, to help with his movie.
Right.
Help with his big documentary. And I understand, and in other words, he didn't want the whole thing connected to these folks, because it's just like the guy involved, it was not like let's just say if he'd be interviewed, he wouldn't come across as very credible, even though there was legit stuff happening there. But if you were just to listen to this guy, you would just, because this guy would just came up, would talk so much bullshit that you would think, okay, well, anything this guy's connected to, you can't believe. And, that was something I knew for a long time. It's sometimes, some wackadoo bullshitters can actually have real stuff happening. And that, and that's a really tough case because they can have some real activity there, but they're trying to fluff it up because they're trying to manipulate people, but they got real action there. So how do you, and it's trouble because you don't then know what real stuff is happening there, even though you know some of it is because you've seen it yourself, but then you can't trust anything else the people are saying. Right. Or at least what that guy's saying.
Matt, since we're talking about that, can you briefly explain the Chewbacca mask? Or supposed Chewbacca mask?
Yeah, okay, so what people don't understand, a lot of them don't understand, Chewbacca was, when Star Wars came out and the planning for the characters came out, was in the mid-'70s, and it was originally that Chewbacca character was supposed to be a reptilian creature. And if you see the drawings that the costume designers all had there, this was a reptilian creature with like reptilian feet. But because Bigfoot mania was happening there, they wanted a Bigfoot type figure on the movie poster. And if it was, you'd think, okay, well, movie poster. Well, yeah, movie posters back then is what one of the main things would bring people into the theater. So having it in the movie poster meant having it in the movie. And so they made it, you could see, especially the way the drawings change from a reptilian foot for the costume design to a classic Bigfoot foot, and everything else about it becoming like a classic Bigfoot. And they had all sorts of books. There was a documentary about how they came up with all the characters, and there's a stack of Bigfoot books on the table, including a lot of witness sketches. So they were using witness sketches and the William Rowe drawing and other ones that actually showed the face, sketches that showed the face of these things. That's what they used to model a Bigfoot. So Chewbacca is supposed to look like a Bigfoot. And then, of course, people are just like later on when they see some real stuff of a Bigfoot, they think, oh, it looks like Chewbacca. Like, in other words, people made it look like Chewbacca. They didn't realize, the Chewbacca was meant to look like a Bigfoot, and it got pretty darn close. So that image that Bill Mudd showed, you could see that there was a little bit of doctoring of the nose in it to make it match better with one of the frames of the footage. And I think he thought that it was, the way he said it back then, it was a modified Wookiee mask. So not exactly a Wookiee mask, but just like kind of the same old thing, and then it was modified to look a little different. So he modified this image to show like what he thought they did with what he said was this mask of the one in Kentucky. And people didn't realize, this image, this comparative image, you won't, if you looked all over the internet, you wouldn't find that image anywhere where it showing it the way he did. No, it was a modified image.
Right.
Anyway, but a lot of people say, oh, it's so close, it's got to be a Wookiee mask. It's just like, guess what? Bigfoots look like Wookiees. Get used to it, because Wookiees were made to look like Bigfoots.
Right. And supposedly his lawyer said, don't tell people you made it in the likeness of Bigfoot. Say you made it in the likeness of your dog so you can copyright it.
Right, and that was part of it. They would, even though it's in the documentary about the costume designers, and you can see in the documentary the stacks of Bigfoot books and drawings on the table, they would never say that it was based on a Bigfoot, because part of the empire of the merchandise from Star Wars was such a big part of the take from that. They didn't want somebody being able to make knockoffs of the Wookiee character in a toy form by saying, oh, it's not meant to be the Wookiee in the movie, it's meant to be a Bigfoot. And look, even they said that they modeled Chewbacca on a Bigfoot. So our toy is modeled on a Bigfoot too, even though it looks identical to the Chewbacca in the film, and we're making it so to confuse people and to think that they're buying a Chewbacca toy. But claiming that, no, this is just our original idea based on a Bigfoot, and anybody can make a Bigfoot toy because nobody owns the copyright to a Bigfoot. Anyway, so it was just like there was official denial from the lawyers. I don't know that. I've never seen it in person, but I was studying law, IP law at that time, and I knew exactly how those conversations would go, how it was like, for anything you're developing as an original character that you want to own the licensing for, you have to be able to, you can't say it's based on this other thing, this, like a real natural animal. You have to say that it is this completely original creation inspired by this and that. But it was clear from the documentary, no, they were trying to make it look like a Bigfoot. It was in the Star Wars came out right at the tail end of the Bigfoot mania in the mid-'70s, and they were really trying to capitalize on the popularity of Bigfoots to get people to come see the film. And it did. I remember when I first saw the poster, I'm like, oh my God, there's a Bigfoot in this new movie. But yeah, they couldn't say it was a Bigfoot because then they couldn't own it.
Right. There's right now, the Home Depot is selling a 7.5-foot Chewbacca, animated Chewbacca. So you could buy one for your living room.
And is that one really supposed to be a Chewbacca, or is it supposed to be a Bigfoot?
I think it says Chewbacca on there.
It looks like Chewbacca.
But if you take the belt off, the ammunition belt,
right.
If you take it off, he's got a Santa hat, he's got a candy cane, but he's 7.5 feet tall. He makes the Chewbacca sound. So I think it is Chewbacca because he makes that sound from the movie.
Yeah.
Animated, it's like $350 for the thing, but it's pretty neat.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna start and try and wrap things up. Matt,
just a couple more questions.
Just a couple of
Sure.
questions in the chat. The first one is from Angela, and she says, "You've been out in the field so many times. I'd love to know, is there a moment behind the scenes that stands out as unforgettable, or maybe even something you wish had made it to air?"
Something behind the scenes that you wish, I guess, would have made it on TV.
Something you wish you could
Well, there were several occasions where we heard them, we got vocalizations, we heard them fairly close to us, that if it would have been captured on audio, then we would have had some tremendous audio. There was a few of those. And I remember, there was all sorts of things like this. There was one point where we were out in Virginia, in the mountains, near the border, we're between of West Virginia and Virginia, up in those mountains, and we had some new production assistants that were always kind of these. I could say the word kids now, but these were in their early 20s, and they'd have the crew, because remember when we got in the field, we'd split up into two teams. So each team, it'd be like me and Cliff, or me and Renee, and then Bubba Cliff, and we'd always mix that up. And each one of them, we'd be going in different directions, and each team had to have its own crew following it. So that was one of the reasons we had the size of the crew that we did, which is about with all combined was a dozen people. But we would have at least 3 crew people following us, each one of us around. And we're going down and we're making sounds and we're hiking down into this canyon, etc. And then we come back up to the truck and they're telling us, hey, they were sitting up there in the vehicles, and first they started hearing rocks that sounded like they were being thrown at the truck. And they went out to look around and they couldn't find the rocks, but they're saying, yeah, there's nothing falling out of the trees. And then finally a big branch comes sailing out of the trees and bam, lands on the top of the truck. And we find this out when we got back to the truck after being down there, and they had walkie-talkies, and we were like saying, "Why didn't you tell us that this was going on up here?" And they're like, "Well, we didn't know. We didn't want to disrupt you guys, interfere with what you were doing." And of course, I remember yelling at them, saying, "What's the name of the show? What's the name of the goddamn show? What do you think we're here for?" But that was part of the struggle. Was here you had these production people. Every state we would go to. Hang on 1 second.
Yes.
My wife says I'm talking too loud here. Anyway, we had production people. Most of them were out of LA, and there was an attitude among a lot of them, especially in the first few years, like they didn't even think these things were real. And of course, I knew that as time went on, we'd be out in the field and they'd hear the things and stuff would happen, and then they'd begin to know. And they did eventually, but then there was still that kind of back and forth, that kind of tension between the objectives of trying to get action and trying to get them on film and trying to do this versus their drive to make an exciting show. Yeah. And those two priorities were very frequently at odds with each other. Yeah. But we still managed to do a pretty decent show, where when people
lost him there for a second.
1 2 1 2 1 2.
You're back.
Okay.
Yep. You're back.
Yep. We got close enough to these things to get audio of them on more than half of the episodes. Because people said, "Oh, you never got anything. You never got anything." It's like, no. Well, if you were there, you'd know that we felt pretty accomplished because we got close enough to them to hear howls and knocks and everything. Yes. After on so many of those, a lot of it didn't come. The audio didn't really come through. And the problem with the audio is it was all geared to recording us talking, right. And it wasn't really geared toward like with a sensitive microphone to hear stuff in the distance.
Yeah.
Speaking of audio, the Ohio howl.
Yeah, well, he was just talking about that earlier.
Oh, I must have.
Yeah, that's where the whole encounter, the two Bigfoot. That's
where that was way back.
No. That was the two Bigfoots. That wasn't during that encounter. The Ohio howl was. I put ads in the newspaper, and out in East Liverpool, it was a homeowner came forward and said the stuff was coming around, and that's where I put out a bunch of recording equipment and recorded for a few months, and it wasn't just that one recording. There was 64 different clips, but that was the best.
The best.
There was ones where we got howls and they were more distant. We got a couple of screams, so we were hearing stuff, at different volume levels, different distances for a while. Over those 3 months.
Well-known pieces of audio that we've got, next to the Sierra Sound. Ohio howl.
I've call blasted that here and got replies to that here, call blasting that.
Yeah.
that howl.
Yeah.
When you're in the Olympic Peninsula and you're hopefully part of this project, like you mentioned about putting cameras further away. I think with the technology now, with the thermal, the AI thermal, the cameras, even the daytime cameras, we can get so much better footage now further away. If there's a way there, that location, you could set cameras up, farther back, and using AI technology, something that can distinguish if it's bipedal or a deer.
Well, no, all we have to do is, the trick in that case from far away is it has to be at a place where they're coming to a very specific spot.
Yeah.
They're coming back to the same 10, 20-foot diameter place, and the cameras can just be zoomed in on that spot.
Right.
And you could have one that's maybe a tight shot and one that's a little wider. And so the idea there was to have put a camera up on a telephone pole type pole out there and dress it up as if it's made for like an eagle's nest. Again, it's just like you don't underestimate how smart these things are. So even with that, even at a distance, you have to make it look like it's not a camera. Like that's not the purpose of it. and then have that aimed at the spot. And that's why also it worked in Kentucky, because the thing was coming to a very specific spot over and over to take these pancakes. So I was able to have a camera a distance away up on the hill, not just inside of a structure. It was inside a structure at the back of the room, looking through the room, then out a window and down a hill about 200 feet and zoomed in that way. So there was no way to tell that there was a camera looking down there. Right. And Adrian kept saying, and they all wanted, like, let's put the camera like right down there. And I'm like, no, you don't get it, man. You do something like that, and the thing is gonna like not feel comfortable coming back. Mm-hmm. Like, even if it doesn't know what a camera is, it's gonna know something is up, and and don't do it. And of course, that's when I was just like, there was enough disagreements of opinion that I kind of backed out. And they moved the camera right down to where the thing would come around, and then it stopped coming around, just like I said.
Of course.
To me, it's exciting that you get to be involved in another similar area in the Olympic Peninsula there, and hopefully you could get the footage now. You could use your knowledge. Hopefully you have say-so in the cameras, and because that would be groundbreaking if we can get another piece of footage like Patty, but even better, something longer, something that you cannot deny.
Well, and I think the footage you would get from that situation is more than one Bigfoot coming up and grabbing salmon out of the stream and sitting there on the edge.
Cut off there.
Come back.
Yeah, I've seen Bigfoot grab salmon.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Well, it's good enough.
Multiple Bigfoot coming down catching salmon on video.
They're doing it.
Nobody's going to believe it.
But can you imagine a Bigfoot?
Well, that's the thing is, I've always said, if you get real footage, the anatomy of these things, I mean, you can, even with AI and stuff, it's easy for me to tell, like, immediately when I'm looking at AI now. Yeah, but you get thermal footage, because that's what it would be, because they come in the dark when they do this. You get high-resolution thermal footage. Just the anatomy of these things is unusual enough that you'll be able to know that it's not a person in a costume. Mm-hmm. And you'll know that, again, it's not AI, that it's real stuff. And it would be validated because we'd be setting up something where we'd be able to get footage year after year during the salmon run at the same spot. And so as time would go on, then you could, like, bring out another scientist to validate that it was the real thing. And it's funny about Renee Holland, because before she worked on our show, she was involved in counting salmon for the government on the Olympic Peninsula.
I remember saying that, yeah.
And so I called her and told her about this thing that I do up there. And she starts sending me photos of herself, like, on this creek. She knew exactly where it was, had been there before. She knew the people in the fisheries department that work, and she knew the whole thing, and da-da-da. So I was like,
Matt, if you and Renee, I don't know if she's part of this project, but if you brought Renee in and you guys teamed up and you got the best footage ever, it's going to be remarkable.
I know. Wouldn't that be funny? Because it kind of break her, that was another source of tension in the show. It was always like they never wanted her to come out as like a full believer, because part of the chemistry of the show is she represented the part of the audience that was skeptical.
Science.
Yeah. And everybody knows her. You meet her, she's the nicest person in the world. I mean, just so sweet.
So many people who really were very frustrated with her on the show and who didn't like her and were just like, why do you have her there? And da-da-da. And they didn't realize that, like, listen, part of the formula is she has to kind of play that role. And what they don't realize is Animal Planet wasn't going to do the show until they wanted a female skeptic. Like, there was a list of requirements of what they wanted this person to be. She had to be a female, had to be a scientist, had to be somebody who'd be a skeptic, and somebody who was going to be in the group. And of course,
lost you.
Oh,
We lost.
we had
you.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Oh, we got you back. Got you back.
Okay. So I said, you're not going to have somebody in the group who's a skeptic. So the best I could do is there's so many people in the group. I could find a female who's a scientist, and who's in the group and who knows us all really well and can kind of play the role as a skeptic. And my thought was that person could be skeptical about individual witnesses, individual pieces of evidence, and did it all constantly unsatisfied, but doesn't necessarily have to be skeptical about whether these things exist or not. And they could accept that these things are real, but still play the skeptic on our investigations. But no, they wanted, it was easier for them to just have somebody who. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it worked out well. I thought it was done very tastefully,
Yeah.
and you needed that.
I just want to ask this last question because I'm so conscious everybody's going to be like, even if you kept him on too long. Matt, are you okay with just one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so Matt Langford is asking, and this kind of ties in with what you've got coming up next too. So Texas conference is in October. Is that still on for you, Matt? Will you be able to do a walk around whilst you're here in Texas? There is a ton of crazy stuff happening in Texas, especially in East Texas Piney Woods. And that comes from a Bigfoot Noah. He's one of our witnesses. We shared his story, his sighting just a few weeks ago.
Well, unfortunately, when I committed to doing Texas, I was scheduled to have a hip replacement surgery. And it was originally scheduled for June, so I thought I'd be able to fly by the time October rolled around. Yeah. So I told them yes, but I had to tell them out recently, and we're working it out with it now. I'm going to have to do a Zoom call, like with video, and kind of be there virtually. But right. I can't be there in the presence, and I'm bummed because I do want to go out in the woods. I have contacts there. I know locations. There's definitely Bigfoots in Texas. I wanted to, be there for a few days before and a few days afterwards so I could go in the woods, but. Yeah. The hip I had the hip replacement 2 weeks ago, and the doctor's like, you cannot get on a plane for the next 3 months.
Yeah, pretty hard.
How's your hip now, Matt?
Well, now, if you would have asked me that question a week and a half ago, I would have told you a different story. But it's coming around now. I'm walking again, but I've got an issue with my knee. But the thing with flying is they don't want you sitting in a seat for hours at a time without elevating. The part because of the swelling and a risk of blood clots, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't do that. So I explained that to Craig. He said he's going to make an announcement about that. So yeah, in a way, I will be there. I'll give a presentation about Bigfoot howls. We'll play a lot of legit recordings through a big PA system there. So people will become very familiar with, a whole bunch of different howl recordings, not just the Ohio howl. And you can hear the similarity from these recordings from all over the country, and it'll make it so that everybody there will be much easier to identify howls, even if they hear them very faintly. They'll just be able to hear the characteristics of a real Bigfoot howl.
Yeah, that would be a great presentation, and so people they'll be happy that you're tuning in with maybe video and play some audio. I think they'll enjoy that.
I really wish I could be there in person, and I'll be back in the fray soon enough. Good. But I had to get this taken care of because it was really hobbling me and hurting. And but people, it's one of those surgeries that people they tend to have in the later years, and you bounce back from, and then you can go hiking again.
Bo Jackson did it. If Bo Jackson can do it, you can do it, right?
Charlie needs
there you go.
Replacement.
Yeah, I'm gonna get
needing his shoulder replaced.
I'm gonna get a new shoulder soon. Years. So yeah, but yeah, it just sucks getting old. But what's the alternative?
No, some of your parts wear out after a while. It's like tires on a car. You drive long enough, and you need some new tires.
Yeah,
amazing that they can replace them for you.
Well, Matt, we want to wrap this up. I know your time's valuable. We went over. Is there anything else coming up, or you want to announce?
We are going to be, people have been asking us at this time of year, where people are all asking us about the schedule for expeditions for next year. We're getting those dates from the organizers now.
and I'm sure he's saying they're on the BFRO.net. We can't hear you, Matt, but BFRO.net. They're going to post the expeditions for next year. I was talking for you.
Okay. Yeah, so we're going to be releasing the dates for the expeditions for next year. And, the people who attend, and the expeditions have done so well and are so popular now that when people go on one, they tend to want to go on more.
Yeah.
Right.
So most of the people who attend expeditions are people who've been there's a lot of people who've been on 10 of them, and who will go on the one in their state every single year. And so they tend to get filled up really fast. When you were doing ones for the BFRO, those things filled up pretty quick,
Yeah.
And so if you're new to this stuff, you do want to pay attention to the announcements of the schedule, and you want to sign up for it as soon as possible. And we're happy that we've been able to make the price of it very reasonable over the years, because the very beginning, we charged a lot of money. We'd still sell out. But when you're charging a lot of money, you're kind of cutting out a whole, college kids couldn't afford it, So we didn't want to price out a lot of the people who would end up becoming good investigators, And because before, it was when the price was really high, it was literally people on their honeymoon, and they had a lot of money for their honeymoon, and they'd spend it on this trips, or people who then thought if they paid a lot of money, they wanted everything catered to them. So it was better just to keep it cheap, tell people to bring their own food and their own camping equipment, not expect us to outfit them all, because that takes too much of our time and focus. And we've made it so it's so the organizers get paid, and they're not getting rich off that. But my whole thing was the organizers have to do it because they like doing it, not because they're trying to do it to make a lot of money.
Right. And it's valuable. You're paying for their knowledge, their expertise, their time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of resources to set up one of these. When you go to one, you will learn so much about Bigfoot, about research. You'll meet wonderful people that will become lifelong friends. So the camaraderie is incredible. I highly recommend it to anybody that's even curious. Go to one, and you will notice, and you'll be addicted right away.
Yeah, what's always great to see what happens with that is very often when people come out for the first time, they're just totally terrified, and it's new to them, and they're so scared and nervous because they've never been out in the woods in the dark in their entire lives, and never walked around in the woods in the dark. And so then they're out with us, not just in the woods in the dark, which is scary by itself, but they're out in the woods in the dark in a Bigfoot area. And so they're really nervous. And so it's great seeing that transformation of them coming out the first time, but they're around other people who are more comfortable with it, and they become more comfortable with it, so that when they come on the next one, they're totally brave, or let's say they're braver than they were the first time, and then eventually they get to the point where they're so comfortable and so brave that they could take people out who are first timers who are terrified, and just kind of calm them down and just say, listen, these things aren't going to kill us. They may try to spook us, but they don't attack people, so don't worry. And it's great seeing people overcome one of their primal fears, because there's a lot of people who are afraid of the dark. And there's nothing, and if you're afraid of the dark, then you're really afraid of the dark in the woods.
Yeah, with the boogeyman lurking in the shadows. Plus, every little twig snap is not a Bigfoot. So they learn to, distinguish between a squirrel, a woodpecker, and an acorn falling, and what a real tree knock is, what a real vocalization is. They learn all that. And then for me, I know you too, probably, when you take we call them newbies, but new people out, and they get to hear their first tree knock, return tree knock, not just a tree knock. I'm talking re-knock and it knocks back. And when they get to experience that, I mean, it's like a proud father.
It is. I'm so glad that you said that, because it really is. It's gratifying when you get to take people out and they actually get to hear something for themselves. They get to like hear, and they'll hear a big heavy knock, and they know that like whatever made that return knock was a lot bigger than us because of the sound that thing made when it whacked the tree. And they just, and other times when that happens, when they say if they hear a howl, after they hear when they say they don't even want to see it. And they said that was plenty. To hear it was just enough. They knew that these things must be huge.
Yeah.
But that's very gratifying, and then it just opens up a new world. But that was the great thing. That's the way I kind of always liked to operate, and I knew I could after a while, which is instead of us having to persuade you and to kind of convince you and argue with you, it's like, no, we can just take you out. Unfortunately, these things will respond. If you do the right thing, they'll respond, and then you'll know. Yeah. Because they say, well, what's the best proof you have? And I mean, really, the best proof I have is I've stood right in front of one. But you don't have that. I can't give that evidence to you. But the next best thing is to take you out so you would have that experience, and then that will be the best evidence, for you. Because
that's a thrill, and I'm happy that I've been able to do that with new people. And we're gonna I know your time is valuable, and Frank here that just made a comment. He wants to be a BFRO investigator. I think, is Frank in Texas?
No, he's in Florida.
Oh, Florida. But yeah, Frank.
He's been on some of our expeditions.
He's been on some expeditions. Frank, just contact him, and I'll be happy to recommend you as an investigator for Florida.
What part of Florida is he in? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know, Frank. What part of Florida are you in, Frank?
I don't know. Oh, Florida.
What part, Frank? What part of Florida? Maybe he'll answer.
Okay.
But he's been on expeditions. He's level-headed. He's a hunter, lifelong hunter. Very sound judgment. He would be a great investigator.
Oh, that's great. Well, there is a Florida one that's coming up in February. That's the only one that we have, that I've posted, at least on Facebook. It's not on the website, but I posted an ad for it on Facebook.
Yeah.
He's South Florida Homestead.
Yeah. So Matt was saying there
we go. In the Facebook group sections, you look for BFRO 1990.
Go to the BFRO.
There's some imposter Facebook groups.
Yeah,
did I lose you? Your video's frozen.
Yeah. For a second. But
hello.
Hello. We're here.
Boy, this is happening over and over.
Okay.
Okay, I lost you again. I'll say it quickly. There is one in February. He could sign up for it. It's going to be up the Panhandle area, northern part of Florida. There's slots still open for that. He can attend. And the way to become a BFR investigator is to meet other people in the group, other people that we know. And you just we need to have that we have several people saying, oh, this guy's good, then we believe that. And then we'll take them in.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, there's all these requirements and all these things, and you have to profess allegiance to this and that. It's like, no, we're just trying to filter out the flakes, Yeah. So it isn't a very high bar. Anyway.
But you do have wonderful researchers, wonderful research, Matt. I've always looked up to you and your research, and you as a man, and I'd call you my friend. And we want to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I know your time is valuable, and hopefully next year you'll come to Kentucky maybe and speak at one of our festivals.
Absolutely. I would love to. I was saddened to see, because we did like a TV commercial at that, what is it called? That liquor, the place that flooded there, Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace. Yeah. We actually shot a Wendy's commercial there with the Finding Bigfoot characters, and it was really sad to see that place flood. But people it was like the wives of the executives there were huge fans of ours. So we'd probably stop in and say hi if I can when I'm back there. But yeah, I'd come to Kentucky.
Come to Kentucky. Come get lucky in Kentucky. May 30th, I've already pitched you your name as one of our guest speakers, but we have to check your schedule and such. But we would love to have you as a guest speaker on May 30th.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to fit that in then. And which city in Kentucky would that be in?
The Red River Gorge. So
great.
It's very close to Buffalo Trace. It's within an hour of say Buffalo Trace. But this past year was our first year. Meldrum was the headliner, and we had Cliff and some others. So next year we would love to have you.
Oh, fantastic! I will be into it. You have now told me about it, because I usually when I'm able to do it, I wasn't able to do it this year because it was uncertain when that surgery was going to happen.
Yep.
But yeah, it's good that you've told me this early, because then I can pencil you in.
Okay, May 30th, pencil us in. I will contact you with the information. Well, Matt, thank you again. Is there anything you want to say?
No, thank you, Matt, though. You've been a wonderful guest. Very fascinating. You've got tons of things to talk about, sightings, recordings, expeditions, all that stuff. I feel like we could just go on and on all night.
Oh, yeah.
So much to say, yeah. But it's been wonderful. It's been an absolute pleasure.
God bless Matt, and heal up nicely.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Everybody else stay on. We'll talk to you. Goodbye, Matt. We'll see you soon.
All righty. Talk to you guys later.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that was a great show. Like, Matt is just such a...
Yeah, he went on longer. I didn't want to keep him.
It's such an incredible individual with all the research he's got, all the information he's got, the Erickson project. Like, you could do an entire show on any one of these.
Well, Matt doesn't do a whole lot of conferences like Meldrum did, or he's got a family and life, and he's got other stuff going on. He doesn't do as much, but people don't realize he has got the most knowledge out there, because he's been in the field. He set up the BFRO's database, the website with the most reports in the world, the networking of researchers, the expeditions, all that knowledge. It's more than most people have. There's a lot of people just do TV shows. I could think of a couple that are newer that have very little time in the field of Bigfoot. But Matt put his time in well before the show. Like
way back in the 90s. And I know long before I joined KBRO, you were getting things going and out there interviewing witnesses like for decades already. But I mean, you think about it now, way back in the 90s, this database was put together before we had the internet, well before that, and all these reports were being compiled. That's got to be sheer passion, because it's not for the sake of somebody scrolling through and picking things out back then, because it was so hard to get access to. But he put the time in it, created something that's just quite extraordinary today. I mean, it's huge.
Yes. So we're gonna tell you some news. Again, we always have this late breaking news. Hold on, I've got late breaking news. Let's see here. It says here, just joking, this weekend, which is in 2 days, tomorrow's Friday, Saturday, Carter County, Kentucky, Olive Hill, the Carter County Bigfoot Festival is shaping up to be huge. Guest speakers, family activities. It's all day. I think it starts around noon, so it's not really all day. Noon, which I like. You can kind of take your time getting there. Beautiful area. Little piece of information. When I made the Kentucky Bigfoot website years ago in the 90s, 96 or 97, it was right around the BFRO time. That's how I got my idea. Anyway, the first reports, the very first report came from the Red River Gorge. But do you know where a big cluster of reports came from in the beginning, Lindsay?
Was it Eastern Kentucky?
Yeah. Where do you think?
Red River Gorge.
No, further. Where are we going this weekend?
Carter County.
Carter County.
Around Carter Caves.
The Carter Caves, Carter County is where I even had pictures of their blob squatches, but people sent in of these blurry things daytime in the woods, in the field, like in an opening, and I had the pictures on the website. They might even still be there. I don't know.
That's a good question, Zach. How's the new book coming along, Charlie?
Oh yeah, thank you, Zach. Let me finish. Thank you, Zach. Carter County this week and Saturday. Please go. You get to meet us. I'll do a presentation. I'm the MC, so get ready for some dad jokes.
No.
Yes.
God, no more dad jokes. God.
Yes, I'm a dad. Cause my son Zach.
Yeah, even
right
Zach
there.
must get sick
Zach.
of dad jokes.
Zach, my new book. What book, Zach? What are you talking about? No, just kidding. My new book drops October. Is it 6th? What's the date? The beginning of October. So soon.
Got to finish it first, Charlie.
It's almost done. It's honestly, thank goodness for Lindsay. She's been helping me organize it, proofing it, editing it, getting it in the correct format. So yes, the book's coming out soon. It's the second edition to Bluegrass Bigfoot. It's full of reports from the Red River Gorge. It's some of my research and some funny stories as well. So looking forward to that.
It was a great show tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. Hope we got to a lot of your questions. Sorry we couldn't get to everybody's question.
It was tough, yeah, to keep up with the chat because there's so much that Matt has to share. I'm glad we got to a couple of them, and apologies to the ones that we didn't get to. Just want to add this.
Oh yeah, again, one last.
How do I do that?
Oh, you just did it.
Wow. It's still there.
Here, remove it and hit it again. So we're going to, again, in closing, Dr. Meldrum, I know you're up there watching us, listening. You know, right now, you know Bigfoot is real, or maybe not real, but you know the answers. You are a tremendous guide, mentor, leader, and, you know, you're going to be sorely missed. And I hope we can do you right by continuing the research. Prayers to Dr. Meldrum's family and his close friends. And with that, we're going to tell everybody good night. Hug your loved ones. It's been a crappy week. So don't take each day for granted. Hug people that you love. Tell them often you love them. And enjoy the little things in life.
All right, guys. Very nicely said, Charlie. Keep talking.
All right.
Zach, first 100 buyers get a signed copy.
Oh, yeah, right.
He signs them. He signs them for free. All right, guys. Thanks very much. It's been a long one, but it's been a good one, and we have thoroughly enjoyed it. I think we might have another guest next week.
You just said it's been a long one and a good one.
Yeah, it has. It's nearly 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
What? Still with the dad jokes.
All right. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
See you next week,
All
everybody.
right. Take care. Sweet dreams. Bye.